transition times for everything. So I'm Faith Edmonton with Gateway Grants and Gateway Business Services. We're kind of two sides that we run both nonprofit development and grant writing and also business coaching. And this is Tracy Parker. She's got lots of experience working in management. You're on? Working in management, both in large business and small business sides. I come from it from the nonprofit perspective. Been in that for the same one, and we're based out of Waynesboro in here for the last 15 years, and kind of just working through the different pieces of that. And part of what we're talking about today is called Beyond Benefits. How do you hire in people? How do you attract people to come in and or stay when you can't necessarily compete against the high salaries offered by bigger companies? So that's part of what we're going to go through today.
Okay, so in today's market, we're here to talk about culture today. That's what everything's about. So I made the joke earlier that
You're
we
not
should
on.
make it. I'm not on?
Can you guys hear her? I don't think
Can y'all
she's
hear me?
on.
He said green is go. I'm green. Yeah? No? Hello, hello. No? Yes? I got a thumbs up? Anyone? Y'all want me to just yell? Oh, you need it for the thing. You still can't hear me?
No.
I don't mind yelling, but he said we needed the microphone for the. Hello. Oh my God.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. That's what we all needed. Okay, well, I saw this earlier and I was like, I'm dreading wearing that. But really, once you're up here wearing it, you really feel like a rock star. I like it. It's great. All right, okay, so we're talking about culture today, and obviously you've heard a lot about that. And we're going to talk about part of culture is how do you create, like Faith said, an environment where you can get and retain employees, especially if you're a small business where you might not be able to be as competitive. So in today's market, we saw a slide earlier that someone had up about the baby boomers, and that in today's market, with so many more millennials and the Gen Zs coming in, or whatever they are today, you really are interviewing for a job. We used to interview for employees. They would come, we'd interview them, and it was our pick. But they said employees have choices now. Gone are the days of employees that pick a job and stay for 40 years. So you can lose an employee in a flat minute. So when you get to an interview, they're interviewing you just as much as you're interviewing them. So how do you retain those employees?
So that goes back to some research that's been done. And some of those, when they were asking employers, what do you think your employees want? What are they looking for? And really the only two things that came up on there were competitive salary and strong benefits. But they also were researching the employees. What are they looking for? And while they're not listed right here, yes, it did include competitive salaries and strong benefits. These were the other top things that came up. Sense of purpose, opportunities to grow. I'm not just starting out as my first job at that company. How else can I grow while I'm there? That ability to have flexibility within my workplace, that's been talked about a lot today. But that was around pre-COVID. That was already a part of things that were changing. The commitment to my health and well-being. I am not just your worker bee. I am a real person. Like, that's a thing that's really coming around, and what the employees are looking for. That positive culture, that culture shift, which is why this whole expo is being focused on. What is that positive culture and how do you get there? And then to feel valued and appreciated. Those were the things that the employees were looking for that were beyond just what the salary and the benefits were.
So we're going to talk a little bit about creating your value proposition. Value proposition, the terminology is typically used in sales and marketing, but what we want to do is give you a mind shift, if you will, on creating a value proposition as an employer. In this situation, the candidates or your employees are your customers, and what you're selling is your business and the reason why they would want to work for you. So that basically it summarizes why a customer would choose your product or service. So why would an employee choose you over the next company down the road? Why would an employee choose you? Why would an employee stay with you when there's plenty of other ample opportunities out there? So what we want to talk about is building your value proposition. What are you offering to your employees, not just in benefits, but in culture as well, that would create an environment where people want to stay?
So where do we get started on all of this? The first one is
All right.
the life cycle.
So we're going to talk about the employee life cycle. So often employees' life cycle is looked at in a linear. You recruit, you hire, you manage, then there's termination, either voluntary or involuntary. So what we want to, again, mind shift you is that it is a cycle. It is circular in that every piece of that is part of the value you bring to the table. Remember, just because somebody left doesn't mean that they're not probably one of your most vocal detractors or advocates out there in the community. Have you all heard of, I'm sure if you're in this room, you've had to have heard of Glassdoor, where employees, former employees or current employees can go out and give you a rating. And so even people that currently work for you and people that no longer work for you, voluntarily or involuntary, are out there being your spokesperson before you ever even get to the table to interview them. So remember that when you're creating that value proposition and we're talking about culture, we're looking at not just in how you go about recruiting and the candidates that you hire, how you go about managing them, but even all the way to the termination point. If they're leaving voluntarily, are you doing anything to collect feedback? Why are they leaving you? If you're not collecting that feedback to understand why someone would leave you, how are you going to stop the next person? You can't chain the doors, right? So you've got to figure out what's causing their exit. If you're terminating somebody and it's not voluntary and they, I think, what was his name, just mentioned, managing them out the door. The idea is if you need somebody and they're to not be on your team anymore, they're bringing your morale down or they're toxic to the environment and they're not helping your culture, then you have to help manage them out. But even as you're doing that, you want to be very careful and create positivity through that process because, again, they are your spokespeople in the market when you're looking for your next hire.
So how do you create this? How do you create and become really thinking about it from the employees? Do you want to go to work tomorrow? Do you like where you work? Do you like the people you work with? I want to create, as a leader at the company, a place where people want to be there. I can't control all the things, but what can I control? So two big things. First is this positive work culture. Again, we're hearing a lot about that today, but what does that look like? That's the training and development. I care about you and your role, your development, who you are in my workforce and moving forward. What can I pour into you? That may benefit me right now, but it may not. I might not see the benefits of that for a few years, but do I invest in my team? Do I invest in those people? The engagement and recognition. And we've talked about a little bit of that with Patrick. He was just going through some of those things. But what is it that connects to that person? If you've got a team of 1,000, you may not be able to do that at your high level, but you may have to break that down into teams. But you could give me a gold star all day long, but if I don't care about your gold star, it's not going to make much difference. So I do a lot of work in the nonprofit sector. My area is kids with special needs, particularly on the autism scale. So we do a lot with the words reinforcements. They're going to do more if I'm offering something that's going to reinforce that behavior to happen again. So I want to look at that within my team too. What is it that's going to encourage them to do that thing that I want again? And that looks really different for different people. Sometimes it's the verbal praise, that recognition in public. Some people really enjoy that. I've got others, if I did that to them, they might not look at me for the rest of the week. So you really have to be creative in what you're thinking, not just creative and I need great ideas, but selective. I don't have to do all the good ideas right now, but I need to pick the one that's going to matter to the people that I'm interacting with and doing that engagement with. A personal email from somebody and their team leader that has this specific thing, not you did a good job this week, but you did a good job interacting with this parent and the words that you use. So I'm using some kind of specific example. That's going to go a lot farther than just a pass by in the hallway, hey, I saw that, that was a good job. Both of those are good, but which one's more impactful? The other thing is the leadership support. What kind of tone are you setting as the leader in your group? Whether you're just managing a team, whether it's really my frontline staff working with that child, they're the team. So they are the leader in that situation. So how do I set them up and teach them that skill to lead that child forward to be that good leader? Are they recognizing the child's positive things? So think about that on your sales team. Are they interacting and being the leader for the client interactions that they're having? So don't just think of leadership support as your top end people going down, but even your front lines are leaders if they're the ones touching your customers. Then also creating this team-centric environment. Again, if these are topics we're hearing throughout the day because they're all true, and they're going to hit these different areas. But is your person coming in to punch a clock, be done, they're doing their thing as long as they check the boxes, and then they're going home? You're going to get some people like that, but the idea is to create that team, particularly for us in the nonprofit sector, where we're pulling in people who are really passionate about our mission, whatever the cause is that we're really trying to promote. Maybe we can't pay as competitively, or we can't pull in all the best top things, but are you passionate about what we're doing? I'm going to go the extra mile because we are committed to that mission that we're doing, that person that we're reaching, one more family that can stay and receive therapy services for us. That's a big deal. And so we really do this team approach and team-centric environment. We're working together. How can I help you do your job better? And that doesn't just come from the top, that comes from everybody on all of those spokes of the wheels. So again, creating the value proposition as they're interviewing you. Do they want to come work for you? The first one is positive work culture. The other is the creative compensation and the value adds. So going against that again, you have your kind of base salaries and benefits that you have there, but what else can I add that will attract? They can go to 6 different places in the area. Why pick us? So that's really what we're going to focus on today.
And before we move on to the next slide, I just want to add that the whole point of the value proposition is you go into, most of us, if we've done any kind of recruiting or hiring, you post the job, you interview, you get the applications, you sit down and do interviews. So one of the key things we want to help you to, again, to shift your mindset is that value proposition in the interview. When you get to the final stage of the interview, are you sharing what your training and development plans are for that position within your organization? Are you sharing with them at that point what your engagement and recognition plans are, what your processes are? Because that's the kind of thing that most people don't even include in an interview process. So if you're looking at your top candidates and they have a choice to go somewhere else, include some of that stuff, because that's part of your value proposition. That's the kind of stuff that would make somebody more inclined to want to work for your company. So definitely include that stuff. All right, so you got a position to fill?
What are you going to do? So obviously these are the standards. We're not going to take a lot of time to go through this. This is what you know. Salary, commission, bonuses. Health insurance is almost a standard now for a lot of places. But again, we work with a lot of small businesses, and that can be a challenge in and of itself. We're not going to spend a lot of time here. This is what you expect. These are other things that are becoming more common: PTO, sick time, retirement plans, company credit cards, education assistance, or tuition reimbursements. These are things that you're hearing more often and that you kind of expect, or they might come and ask you about. So how can we go bigger than that? How can we be different than that? If I can't compete on that first one of these higher salaries, or maybe I can't do a matching on a retirement fund, what else can I do that can make this place be a place people want to come work? Or the people that I already have here, do they want to get up in the morning and like being here? Because if I like being at my job, I'm going to be more pleasant, I'm going to be more productive, I'm going to be more supportive, and more engaged in that teamwork.
So we're going to move on to the the creative benefits, and that's why we're here. But I want to add to, even if you are a big company and you can afford these things, that should not prevent you from getting more creative. So we've got cost. There are some low and some no-cost options. So this is just what we did, was just basically vomit out a bunch of cool ideas that we've seen, that we've experienced, that we've heard about. These are all a bunch of things you can do. These are some cost items. They might cost you a little bit, but how much is it going to cost you to not do it, right? So let's just go, we're going to pop around and go through a few of them. You might offer gym membership. That's something if you've got an an organization where you want to promote wellness. You might look at wellness programs and initiatives, a volunteer match program. That's something you could do cost or no cost. Something like incorporating or instilling the spirit of volunteerism. And if you have employees that actually like to go out and volunteer for certain organizations, maybe you give them an hour a week off where you pay them, and for their hour while they're at work, they go off and volunteer. And that's something that they would feel good about and help support, they would know that you believe in what they're doing, and it's an hour. So technically, it costs you. You're paying that hour anyway, but you've just instilled a value in one of your employees.
One of the ones that I personally have benefited from on this was some in-office childcare. We set that up. We arranged to have a babysitter come. It allowed several of our key staff to keep working longer hours because they weren't running back and forth trying to get their children worked out. And it was only 5 or 6 kids. It wasn't a huge cost for the company itself, but the productivity we got out of all the people who could stay and continue working and how much we valued them, it really changed. Those people are still at the company, and that was 10 years ago.
Okay, my absolute favorite on the list is
Well,
the
that mic
concept.
goes
Am I off? Oh, thank you. I noticed none of y'all said anything. You thought, great, can't hear her. Concierge service. Did anyone ever worked somewhere with a concierge service or have an idea about what that might be? Okay, so I worked at a company once in Kansas City. Amazing. They had a concierge, a paid position, and that person's sole job was to go around and run everybody's errands. So if you had to get your car picked up from the shop, take your dry cleaning, any errand you had, that was a paid position. It was an hourly position. It wasn't even like that high because it was not a skilled trade. That's it. I'm flinging my head around too much, and then that's what's happening. Anyways, so they went out and ran everybody's errands. There we go. Sweet spot. All right. Anyways, they went around and I don't know what I'm doing. This is not for me. I am not a rock star. You see that? That's what's happening. I'm going to hold it. Anyways, they go around and run errands. So guess what? Now none of the employees don't have to be off the job running their errands on their lunch break, and it's an incredible value-add service. So for an hourly position, even if, let's say hypothetically, you only hired somebody and it was a part-time job, and they would actually take like a concierge. They would take, oh, thank you. We'll see how that's better. We have to add minutes to our time. This isn't fair. All right. Testing. There we go. All right. So anyways, they would go around and run errands, and so that allowed people to stay on the job. One of the other things this company did was just brilliant, is they brought in once every other week, they actually got a hairstylist, and they brought in a hairstylist. So the employees, it didn't cost the company anything. The employees scheduled an appointment to get their hair cut with the hairstylist, and the hairstylist came to them. They paid the hairstylist, didn't cost the employer anything, but the value add of now not having to go get your hair done, or for the men not to go get their hair cut outside of because most people do that during the work hour. They also would bring in a weekly massage therapist. So they would come and set up the chair massage. The massage therapist just charged $10 so people could sign up for her. She'd be there all day. Employee could pay the $10, get their 10-minute or 20-minute massage, go back to work. So it just created an environment of this culture that was amazing. And the best part is nobody ever left work. So high productivity. So it's brilliant. You can't afford not to do those things. And this company also would once a week, one of those appointments every month, they would massages on us, and then the company would just pay for the massages that day. And of course, I'm sure she'd get a lot more business on that day. But next slide.
So these are some of the things that don't cost a whole lot. And this is where you can really be creative. What would work for you, your environment, your team? There are all kinds of different things. One of the things that my group particularly likes, ice cream truck days. They say it's for the kids, but it's not really. It's really for the adults. They come running out with their ice cream money. Every Friday, we know that the ice cream truck guy is coming by. It's funny, it doesn't cost me anything. I just have to schedule and have them show up. But it just pulls in that environment of, I like to be here. I want to be here on Friday because the ice cream guy is coming by.
Believe it or not, nap space. Actually setting up an office with a couple of couches on it where someone could go in and just take a quick nap, or nixing the conference room. Instead of having a stuffy conference room meeting, get rid of the conference table and put in a living room set up in there and actually have an environment. So when you have your meetings, it's just a more engaging environment. Those are things that you could do. The conference table costs money, the couch costs money, so it doesn't cost you anything differently, but it's something you could do, again, that instills a completely different culture.
The other one that I've seen work really well in terms of creating this culture of we care about you is a sick pool. So we, as a company, we can take and donate our PTO time into a sick pool. And in this particular year, we've had somebody who had back-to-back, so 3 in a row deaths within the family. He needed the time off. He didn't have it all saved up, so we were able to contribute as a collective group into helping him have that time to go in and recover and deal with all of the fallout of that. It's a lot of emotional pieces, but it's just a lot of paperwork and other things like that you have to do. Then about 3 months later, another person on the staff, their house burned down. And she was out finding other things. So we were able to really care and wrap around in a way that showed them that they were important, they mattered to us by donating sick leave. Doesn't cost the company anymore. We were already paying for it for somebody else. They're just donating it around within the company.
There are some car wash services that actually come to you. And if you've got a hose and some water on the outside of your building, bring around the car wash guy. Again, the employees are paying for it, but it's a convenience that just speaks volumes.
All right, so anybody have some ideas of cool things that your company has done or that you would love to see happen at your company that this is why I like working here, those kind of ideas?
Anything you haven't seen already? Yeah, let's hear it.
End the day at 3 o'clock on Friday.
Absolutely. But I like what Patrick said earlier. Don't end the day, party. 3, like once a month, 3 p.m. Friday party. That's excellent. And that flexible work schedule is a really big deal. Consider embracing a flexible work schedule because people that makes, even if it's once a month, you can have a 4-day work week instead of a 5-day work week. That's the day that you can go run all your errands, and then you're not cutting because you actually lose less time that way.
Awareness and mindfulness is a big part of our company, and so we'll actually have a whole meditation day.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Okay, for like the company, obviously, but
Yeah.
bonding.
And speaking of bonding, that's actually one of the things another company I work with did once. They built, because of embracing wellness, they had a gardener come out and help us. A bunch of people went out and built a raised bed, and we all gardened together. So we all took turns. Everyone was on the schedule, and different people from different departments engaged and went out and did gardening together. And then when it was time to harvest, everybody got to take vegetables and lettuce home, and it was fantastic. And you can't be out gardening with somebody and then in a meeting later have hostility towards them. You were just gardening with them. It just really helps that building that teamwork environment.
It also, from the way you've described it, it shifted because it wasn't just your department that did it. So it was a mix-up. So you got to meet people from other parts of the organization that you may not run into as often.
So the whole point of this was these are just some ideas to get the juices flowing, so to speak. Every one of us works at a different company and has a different set of employees, and it depends on what the environment is. It depends on are you doing a product or a service, and how the work environment is as a whole. But the idea is to get creative. You don't have to stick with the status quo when it comes to adding your value to an organization or developing that culture. You definitely can get creative and do some things outside of the box. And that's what makes you really interesting as an employer, and where employees just don't want to leave. I'll tell you, that company I had that had the concierge and the massage therapist and the hairstylist, I guarantee you somebody had to die for a position to come open in that company. Like, nobody left there. The fun thing is, think about tax value too, because like one of the things I talked about was the volunteer. There are potential tax incentives and some of the things that you can do for some of your employees. So think of that. Talk to your CPA about some of the ideas you have and where you can get some tax advantage.
And again, the whole point of this is if you want to create a place where people want to be at, they want to show up to work, and they want to stay with where you're at, you have to do that by creating this positive work culture. And in your place, that's going to look different. It's going to have some similar components. We hear the themes coming through this week. But yours is going to look a little bit different. Mine's going to look a little bit different, and that's okay. But be willing to go with it. Be willing to change, take a different step as your culture, as your company changes. It's the company that I worked with 10 years ago, 5 years ago, a year and a half ago, pre-COVID. Like, those are different people. It's a different company. I've got to really, it's the same organization, but I've got to really check out who's with me now and how do I pivot on that? How do I change that a little bit so that it's still relevant, it's still a positive place, and that we can still be productive? So this is one of my favorite pictures. Who's the leader? Just think about that as you're going through, as you're creating things. Who's the leader in this picture?
Yeah, that's right. So one last thing, and I think we've spoke to this, and I think I've heard it in some other sessions, is you can teach a skill. You can't teach attitude. So when you go both with your current employees and with anybody that you are recruiting and through the interview process, consider that you can always teach a skill. You can't teach attitude. So hire the right person. You can teach them how to do the job. Make sure you're hiring the right person for the culture of the organization.
And the resume is the skills. So even if they're missing something on that resume, but that attitude, that teachability piece is there, that's maybe your stronger candidate than somebody who already has the resume, has the skill listed, but that attitude piece is not there.
I will tell you, I was telling Deborah, right? What was your name again?
Sandy.
Sandy, sorry, thank you. I was sharing her a story that one of the departments that I had under me in my last organization that I worked with was the customer service department. And it was so hard to find the right skill set for that. It was a tough job. And one day we were interviewing like crazy and just kind of going through one failed group of people after another. And one day I'm at Taco Bell, and the lady in the Taco Bell line at Taco Bell taking my order was phenomenal. She was spectacular. She could have turned in a resume and we never would have looked at her because she did not have the skills she needed. But she was a brilliant customer server, went above and beyond, and was a problem solver. And so I pulled her aside and talked to her, and we hired her, and she was one of the best hires. If she had applied for that job, she might have been completely looked over because she didn't have customer service, like the phone service skills or the technology skills. But we were able to train her on that. And so I want to close with, remember, that's all about hiring. It's important to hire the right people. It's important to manage and engage your employees the right way. But it's equally as important to manage the termination process and know that a happy employee is not what you're looking for. You're not looking for happy employees. There are plenty of employees that are happy not being accountable, that are happy showing up to work late. So you're not looking for happy employees. You're looking for engaged employees. And you want to make sure that when they leave, they are not, again, being a negative spokesperson for your organization.
All right, these are the takeaways. We are out of time, so I'm not going to read through and go through those much. But again, these are the things that you're catching on all of the breakouts today and all the pieces. How do you create that positive work culture? Because that is imperative even above just what you can offer for salary and benefits.
The end.
Want to steal too much into your time?
Oh, not at all. Thank you. That was great.